So I'm going to show you how to make a caramel nut tort. It is such a delicious recipe. It really was only available to people who took my Sweet Indulgence Master Dessert class, but I posted on social media and everyone begged for the recipe, so here it is. This is what we served for our Thanksgiving dinner. And you're going to need a springform pan, and you can get these in metal, you can get these in silicone, just any kind will do. It's the kind where you can open it up and then often used for cheesecake. So this is the best pan I would use for this dessert. What you can do to make cleanup easier and also to make it easier to transfer to another dish when serving is to take a piece of either wax paper or parchment paper and put it on the bottom. You don't have to do this, but it does help. And then you close the ring. So that's how we prep our pan. So the first thing we're going to do is make our crust. You're going to need a food processor that's fitted with the S-blade, a dry food processor. When you're using things like nuts or grains, you want to make sure you just haven't used it for something wet or it'll get all mushy. Be like a pesto instead of a flour-like consistency. So we're going to take everything is done in ounces. I used to be a restaurant pastry chef. Cups are not accurate, so I do everything in ounces. So get an inexpensive food scale. They're less than $15 at Bed Bath & Beyond. You can use a coupon. You can also use it for postage. So we have 12 ounces of raw unsalted cashews, a teaspoon of vanilla powder. I do not have a preference of brands for vanilla powder. I always say get the best that you can afford in the biggest size. Prices vary day by day on Amazon. You just want to get a pure one that's just vanilla bean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to process this into a flour-like consistency. That just takes a few seconds. You can see it's kind of like breadcrumbs. It doesn't have to be super finely ground. As a matter of fact, if you keep going, it will turn into a nut butter, which we don't want. And then I have 12 ounces of dates. Really important, you learn the hard way, that when you put them in your food processor, either squeeze each one individually, and even when I've done that, I've had a pit, or cut them in half beforehand. Because when you get a pit, it can damage your blade. Sometimes they're sneaky, sometimes they're so small that you don't see them. Even though it says pitted dates, trust me, very often there is a pit. I'm using the Deglet Nor dates. They're a little bit drier and less sweet, but they're also a lot more cost effective when you're using a lot of them than the Medjool. If you were just going to use dates for eating, there are other brands that, or not brands, but varieties you might like better, like the Kalas or the Bari or the Medjool. But for dessert recipes, really we're using dates just for their neutral sweetness. So I tend to go with the Deglet Nor because you can get great prices. Ta-da, see? A pit. That's why we do that. Because when I don't, I can guarantee there is one. And you'll know right away when there's a pit because the food processor will either slow down or stop. So now what we're going to do is process this into almost a ball. See, now the fact that it did that shows me that there's probably a pit, even though you saw me check all of them. How is it possible? See? A pit. Even though I hand squoze, if that's a word, each of them. Got to get the blade all the way down once that happens. There we go. So when it starts to slow down, you want to check it by opening the food processor, taking a little bit of it, squeezing it together to see if you can form a ball easily, and break the ball in half. And if no crumbles, that's called the break point. The crust is ready. And then you're going to pour it into your pan. And then just using your palm, your fingertips, just press it down. This itself is just a delicious cookie in itself, and it could be a raw dessert, a raw cookie, either eaten raw, rolled into balls, or dehydrated. It's a cashew cookie. The vanilla powder really takes it to the next level. Don't skimp on vanilla powder. Vanilla extract is basically watered down vanilla flavoring that either contains sugar or alcohol. I would rather use no vanilla than use an extract. Once you have vanilla powder, you'll agree with me, I'm sure. If not, refer to the video with Chef Ron of Sun Cafe, where he talks about how his most popular dessert, the Kale shake, has $1 worth of vanilla powder in it. There is no comparison. I get nothing for saying this. I have no stock in vanilla bean. It's just that good. So there we have our beautiful crust right there. And now we make the filling. This is so easy to make, you can almost make it at the last minute if you had the ingredients. So now we're going to make our date paste. I have 1 pound of pitted dates that I did squeeze each one, so hopefully they won't surprise me with a pit that's soaked in water. You never want to throw away the soak water for dates. That's where all the sweetness is now. So never throw that away. When you soak nuts and seeds, that's different. You want to throw that pungent, cloudy water away, but not from soaking dates. If you don't have time to soak the dates for several hours or overnight, you can soak them in boiling water. And you place them in your food processor with the S blade. Normally when I make date paste, it's 1 pound of dates to 8 ounces of water, but for this particular recipe, I've doubled the water. And now I'm gonna process. What's going on? So once it's nice and smooth, I'm going to add 12 ounces of almond meal. What almond meal is simply almonds, raw almonds that are unsalted, that have been ground up into a powder. If you can't find it, it's available most places for sure, Trader Joe's. You can take raw almonds and grind them yourself. There's also a teaspoon of vanilla powder, and now I'm going to process. That's our filling. I don't know if you guys ever heard of a Neiman Marcus bar, but my friend Kevin says that this pie reminds him of that, so I'm guessing that's a good bar that they sold that's decadent and delicious. What's really cool about this dessert, other than it takes really no time at all to make, is it's not only vegan, but it's whole foods. It's gluten-free, dairy-free, refined sugar-free, and of course no salt or oil or flour. Now there's a lot of batter that's left on the blade. Best way to get that off easily is to put it back down on the base, pulse for just a second, and you can see the blade is completely clear now. So I can get the last bit out. Now this does not need to be cooked because it's a raw dessert. However, it does need to set up in the freezer several hours, preferably overnight. So I'm going to have to come back and show you what it looks like when it's done, but at least you'll know how to make it now. I find the easiest way to smooth the top of any dessert is with something called an offset spatula. It's just a little bit easier than using a spoon, a spatula, or a knife because of the beveled aspect. So we're just going to spread this. It smells so good. And once it's smooth, we are going to top it with 8 ounces of chopped walnuts. I hope I had the ratio right. I'll have it below. It was 8 ounces of cashews, 12 ounces of almond meal, and 8 ounces of walnuts. So we're just going to sprinkle this over the top evenly. These are chopped raw and unsalted. Spread them out. Press it down. It's all covered. And then you take date syrup. I recommend the organic I Love Date Lady. I can get you a discount code below, but I've tried other brands. This just tastes the best to me. And you don't have to measure, but if you needed a measurement, I would guess it's 2 tablespoons. And you just squirt it over the top. This is gonna spread out in the freezer. This gives it that glazed look, and so good. You'll see when it's all frozen, you won't see the lines. Looks like I'm doing a lot, but I promise you it's no more than about 2 tablespoons because it comes out in a very fine line. You see, that really took no time at all to make. Many of these ingredients you already have on hand, and if you don't, with the exception of vanilla powder, they're really available at any supermarket. So there you have the caramel nut torte. I'm gonna pop it in the freezer, and then I'm gonna show you what it looks like when it's set up. So it's been about 4 hours. Realize that everybody's freezer is different depending on where you put it in the freezer. Ideally, you do want to freeze this overnight. This is a dessert that has to stay in the freezer, and I'll show you the best ways to store it. So what you're going to do is you just open the ring, you carefully lift it off, and you can see by putting this piece of parchment paper, I don't have to wash this. It's clean. Now, what I recommend for storage, depending on how much room is in your freezer, is either a good piece of Tupperware that is meant for the freezer. This will fit perfectly. Or if you don't have a lot of room in your freezer, you get a jumbo Hefty or Ziploc bag. You can write the date, the name on it, and these also work great. You can also slice it in advance and then freeze it sliced if you prefer. But since this is for the holiday, what we're gonna do is find our prettiest platter. Mine is Talavera from Mexico. And speaking of Mexico, if you ever like to join me for the ultimate Rancho La Puerta experience, email help@chefaj.com, because we're putting groups together for 2023 where we can all go together and you'll get a discounted rate. So what I like to do is then just easily take the parchment paper away. Look at this, isn't this beautiful? And then place it on the platter. And then you have a beautiful caramel nut torte for the holidays or anytime. Bailey and I would like to wish you and your family a very happy, healthy holiday season. Take care, everyone.